Welcome to the Deep Dive. We've pulled together a stack of sources for you today, running the gamut from the big picture global trade policies shaping entire industries all the way down to the latest shiny gadgets and the powerful little chips that make them tick.
It's a fascinating mix. We've got reports analyzing tariff impacts, industry outlooks for the crucial semiconductor sector, even some, juicy leaks about upcoming phones.
Right.
And hands-on impressions from the recent Computex show, giving us a glimpse of future PC hardware.
Exactly. Our mission is to cut through all this, dive into these sources, and pull out the absolute most important nuggets, the key insights, and maybe surprising connections that help make sense of this incredibly dynamic world of technology and the forces constantly reshaping it.
Let's unpack it.
Okay, so starting at the highest level, let's look at this major theme emerging from the Thomson Reuters report: the significant impact of tariffs on global supply chains. It seems companies are really feeling the heat here.
They absolutely are. A striking point from the report is a survey where, get this, 76% of respondents believe these new U.S. tariffs aren't just a temporary thing. They see them as a long-term strategic shift in trade policy, expected to last at least 4 years.
4 years. Wow, that's a significant time frame for business planning.
It really is.
So what are the concrete consequences companies are anticipating or already seeing from this?
Well, the most direct impacts are increased costs, obviously, major disruption to established supply chains, the ones built over decades,
Right.
and the unwelcome necessity of raising product prices for consumers. Nobody likes that.
No. So faced with this, how are companies responding? Are they just kind of absorbing the costs?
Not entirely, not according to the sources. They're actively rethinking their entire operational footprint. A significant majority, 72%, are either already doing or seriously considering changing where they source and manufacture things.
72%.
Yeah. We saw examples like plans to, quote, increase domestic manufacturing units or boost the production of essential components domestically. It's a clear move towards resilience, trying to reduce reliance on, single regions.
And technology is playing a crucial role in navigating this complexity too, isn't it?
Definitely. The report highlights how companies are leveraging tech. 64% are using technology for analyzing trade lanes,
Okay.
essentially mapping the most efficient and least tariff-impacted routes. Over half are using tech for identifying risk factors or potential savings. That's 60%.
Makes sense.
And running what-if scenarios, about 55%, to model different trade policy outcomes. Plus mapping out their incredibly complex supply chains end-to-end, that's 51%. It's all about gaining visibility and agility.
Now, when you talk about complex supply chains, one company is impossible to ignore: Apple. They're discussed extensively, BBC, Bloomberg, even places like Reddit. Their history and scale of manufacturing in China, especially with partners like Foxconn at massive sites like iPhone City, it's legendary.
It really is. It's a partnership that, kind of defined global manufacturing for a generation. Apple started building significant capacity in China back in the early 2000s.
Right.
And what evolved was this massive, highly efficient ecosystem of suppliers, skilled labor, infrastructure around places like Zhengzhou. That scale, that know-how, it's incredibly hard to replicate elsewhere quickly.
And that deep reliance is exactly what makes them vulnerable to these tariff discussions. We saw figures like a potential 145% tariffs mentioned in one source. That's not a small adjustment.
No, that's a fundamental challenge to their entire cost structure, precisely.
So trying to shift that kind of production scale, moving millions of workers, rebuilding supplier networks, training new workforces, that takes years, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just finding a new factory building. It's recreating that entire intricate dance of components and labor. It takes time, a lot of time.
So how might a company like Apple try to navigate this based on what the sources are suggesting? There are a few ideas floating around.
Well, one is the classic approach, seeking specific product exemptions from the tariffs, lobbying for that.
Okay.
Right. And another discussed strategy, without getting political about the tariffs themselves, is the idea of potentially shifting final assembly to other countries.
Oh, okay.
We saw mentions of places like Vietnam or India, where partners like Foxconn and Pegatron already have some footprint, or even closer locations like Mexico or Canada.
And the logic there ties back to trade rules, leveraging those substantive transformation rules for country of origin.
Exactly. That's the key. The idea is if enough value is added or the product undergoes significant transformation in that third country, it could be deemed to originate there for tariff purposes.
Got it.
Which could potentially avoid or significantly reduce the rate it would face if imported directly from China. It's a complex logistical and, frankly, legal maneuver many companies are considering.
And there were other, maybe less conventional ideas floated too, like bundling services with hardware.
Yeah, things like altering the overall product valuation for tariff purposes that way, or even trying to transparently show consumers the tariff cost burden. So it's a tricky one.
What really stands out here is the sheer volatility, though.
Absolutely. The Thomson Reuters report stressed the need for companies to monitor policy changes constantly daily, even hourly in some cases.
Wow.
We even saw conflicting reports within our sources about whether major consumer electronics like cell phones might ultimately be exempted from these tariffs. That level of uncertainty makes long-term strategic planning incredibly difficult.
Okay, let's transition then from the complexities of global trade policy to maybe the driving engine behind so much of the recent tech excitement, semiconductors, and the AI boom they power. The rapid growth here is just, well, it's obvious in the Deloitte report.
It's phenomenal growth.
Yeah.
Generative AI chips,
Right.
that includes GPUs, CPUs, specialized accelerators, the whole lot valued at over $125 billion just this year, 2024.
Just incredible.
And the forecast for 2025 exceeds $150 billion. But AMD's CEO, Lisa Su, offered an even more ambitious prediction.
Oh, yeah.
She suggested the total AI accelerator market could hit $500 billion by 2028.
500 billion. For context, wasn't the entire global semiconductor market just over that amount total in 2023?
Exactly. It implies a fundamental re-architecture of global computing infrastructure on a scale we haven't seen since, well, maybe the internet boom itself.
Wow. And that kind of demand is driving incredible performance from companies like NVIDIA, right?
Absolutely. The Investopedia and NVIDIA's own sources show record revenue for them, over $44 billion in the first quarter, fueled by a massive 73% increase in their data center segment, hitting $39.1 billion.
Just staggering numbers.
That surge even led them to briefly surpass Microsoft in market capitalization. It just highlights how central their chips are to the current AI build-out.
But this isn't just a purely market-driven story, is it? Geopolitics is deeply intertwined here, as some of the sources point out.
Oh, that's a critical layer. You can't ignore it. Sales restrictions to countries like China are directly impacting companies like NVIDIA. They actually absorbed a $4.5 billion charge in the first quarter, specifically due to restrictions on exporting their H20 chips to China.
$4.5 billion charge. Ouch. And this isn't just about export controls. It's part of a broader strategic competition, right?
For sure. We're seeing the rise of sovereign AI initiatives globally, nations investing heavily to build their own AI capabilities, aiming for, digital self-sufficiency.
And the U.S. seems to be actively pursuing something like a digital counter BRI, maybe, strategically deploying AI infrastructure with allies.
That seems to be the direction. The Stargate venture is a prime example
Yeah.
of this scale and strategic intent.
Yeah.
You've got OpenAI, Oracle, SoftBank,
Right.
building massive facilities, potentially requiring $40 billion worth of NVIDIA's latest GB200 chips, aiming for 5 gigawatts of power capacity. That's not just building a data center. It's establishing a strategic computational hub. Huge undertaking.
So, beyond the demand and the geopolitics, the semiconductor industry faces its own internal challenges too, according to Deloitte. A major one is talent.
A very significant one. The industry needs to add 1 million skilled workers globally by 2030.
1 million.
Yeah. And this challenge is compounded by an aging workforce in some areas, and like we said, geopolitical factors that can restrict the flow of talent. Finding and training that workforce is honestly as critical as designing the next chip.
And there are technical hurdles too, things like shift-left security and 3D ICs.
Right. Shift left just means tackling security vulnerabilities much earlier when the chip is being designed, not after it's made, which is far more efficient and effective.
Okay.
And 3D ICs refer to stacking chip components vertically instead of just side by side. Allows for much greater density and performance, but boy, does it add layers of manufacturing complexity. These are fundamental technical challenges the industry is really grappling with right now.
Now, contrasting with the likes of NVIDIA and these massive AI infrastructure builders, Apple seems to be taking a distinct path with AI based on what we're seeing from Bloomberg and their own briefings.
Yeah, their strategy seems highly centered on integrating AI deeply into their ecosystem and directly onto devices, what's often called edge computing.
Right. On the phone itself.
Exactly. Supported by their private cloud computing, or PCC infrastructure, for things that need a bit more power but still need privacy. It aligns very strongly with their core philosophy of user privacy and leveraging the power of their own hardware.
It's an interesting differentiator, and the sources did mention potential strategic partnership or even investment talks with OpenAI,
Right, which is fascinating.
and even hinting at a maybe possibility of interest in Sam Altman for a leadership role, drawing that parallel to how the NXT acquisition brought Steve Jobs back.
That connection to OpenAI is noteworthy. Even with their focus on on-device AI, it suggests they recognize the importance of leveraging external capabilities from the leading edge of AI research. Their approach seems to be, how can we integrate powerful AI into our private, secure ecosystem rather than necessarily trying to build the competing giant models ourselves?
Makes sense for them. All right, let's shift gears completely now. From the abstract forces shaping the industry to the tangible tech you might actually, touch and use. We saw some fun stuff highlighted in that 22 new gadgets source on YouTube.
Always enjoyable to see the creativity out there. Some practical and innovative items popped up like those magnetic 8-in-1 cables.
Oh, yeah.
The idea of 240W fast charging, high data speeds, 4K video, and magnetic winding in one cable sounds incredibly convenient.
Yeah,
Less clutter.
definitely appeals. And then the more ambitious concepts, like the Spacetop G1 AR laptop, aiming to give you unlimited private screens and augmented reality.
Yeah, freeing you from physical display limitations. Very sci-fi, but interesting. Or the slightly quirky but genuinely useful Leflay frozen pack, a backpack that doubles as a car fridge.
A backpack fridge.
Perfect for road trips or, carrying temperature-sensitive items. And tiny but cool items like the TID Spanner 2.0, a titanium multi-tool compact enough for a keychain.
Nice. The mag sleeve bottle also caught my eye, the one with a magnetic sleeve that can hold your phone or keys, and even acts as a tripod.
That's a great example of simple, clever design for everyday utility. Just smart thinking.
Moving to the PC world then, Computex 2025, covered by places like Digital Trends, PCMag, Corsair, MSI, it showed that despite the massive AI hardware focus, innovation in traditional PC components is still very much alive and kicking.
Oh, absolutely. We saw promising news for mainstream gamers and PC builders with AMD's Radeon RX 9060 XT GPU launch. It looks in position to compete aggressively on price against NVIDIA's 5060 Ti.
Competition there is always good news for consumers.
Always. And PC cases continue to see creative design. Cases like the InWin D Lite, mixing aluminum and glass for style and airflow, seemed pretty nice.
And that nostalgic return of the beige box aesthetic with the Silverstone FLP02.
Yeah, did a fun retro there. And Cooler Master's massive Cosmos case, getting new front panel options, shows diversity for builders at the high end, too.
For those pushing performance limits, the cooling concepts were kind of wild. Thermaltake showed a CPU cooler, the Minecube 360 Ultra ARGB.
The one with 4 LCD screens on the block itself.
Yes. Total visual overkill, maybe, but certainly eye-catching.
And Noctua, known for serious performance cooling, demonstrated a fascinating prototype for a pumpless liquid cooling system using a thermosiphon effect.
How does that work?
Relying on heat, causing liquid to vaporize and circulate passively. No pump needed. That could significantly simplify complex liquid loops if it makes it to market effective.
Interesting.
Thermaltake also showed large-scale liquid immersion cooling, the IX700 concept. Big tank stuff.
Beyond traditional PCs, we saw some other mobile tech pushing boundaries too. The Huawei Watch 5 introducing unique fingertip multi-sensing health tech.
Yeah, that looked interesting. And Xiaomi continues its push for vertical integration, announcing a self-developed 3nm mobile chip, the Swanji Air 1.
Another company designing its own silicon. Big trend.
It really is. Aiming for performance optimization, reducing reliance on external suppliers like Qualcomm or MediaTek.
Yeah.
And, of course, the consumer tech world wouldn't be complete without leaks and rumors.
True. The Nothing Phone 3 was buzzing on Reddit and Business Today. Carl P. apparently confirmed a price point around £800.
Puts it in a pretty competitive space.
Definitely. But there were conflicting reports about the launch date, some saying Q1, others July, and even speculation it might drop the signature glyph interface.
Which would be a major shift for their brand identity, if true.
Yeah, it highlights how much navigating consumer expectations and supply chain realities plays into these launches. Always a balancing act.
For sure.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive today, look at how these different threads connect. The global trade environment and tariffs are directly impacting the complex supply chains that bring us the latest chips and components, driving companies to rethink where they make things.
Right, and the explosive growth in AI is creating just unprecedented demand for advanced semiconductors. That fuels innovation, but also intensifies geopolitical competition and leads to these strategic national initiatives.
And amidst all these massive forces, companies are still designing everything from advanced PC components to clever, innovative gadgets for everyday life, trying to push forward on all fronts.
It's a landscape defined by both these huge macro-level pressures and, at the same time, micro-level innovation. Companies are simultaneously grappling with fundamental shifts in global trade and supply chain resilience while pushing the boundaries of chip design, AI integration, and consumer product features.
It's clearly a dynamic period, requiring immense adaptability. And maybe to leave you with a thought based on everything we've discussed today. Considering that significant talent gap facing the semiconductor industry needing, was it, 1 million more skilled workers globally by 2030?
Yeah, 1 million. It's a huge number.
And the increasing complexity and fragility of global supply chains under these tariff pressures, perhaps the biggest tech challenge over the next few years isn't just inventing the next cool gadget or designing an even faster chip. Maybe it's actually figuring out how to build the necessary workforce and create the truly resilient global systems required to reliably design, manufacture, and deliver all this innovation to the world at scale. What do you think is the most significant challenge looking ahead?